All right, everybody, welcome back. This is episode number 4 of Lions Life. Like we said, we were going to have a special guest. Our first guest is going to be looking at him, Danny Pryce. Danny Pryce was a 1,000 game winner as a head coach at FIU, along with being a top hitter whenever he played at FIU. So we just wanted to go ahead and thank you for joining Mark and I today on Lions Life. If you want to give a little regards, introduce yourself.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, to be invited to come in, talk on the podcast. It's kind of exciting for me. Mark and I have been together since 1996, if I'm correct. So I tried to reminisce about that just today. So a long time, almost what's that?
Too long to add up.
Yeah,
Dang,
long time.
almost 30 years, guys.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into segment number 1. Coach Pryce, obviously you got Mark as a player to start out, and then he developed into a coach. But before he even stepped on the campus, Mark went through the passing of his father the day before he stepped on campus. So we've heard in previous episodes, obviously Mark's side of it all. But whenever you were taking on a player, obviously Mark wasn't your only player. You had a big roster to handle. But I believe, Mark, wasn't Coach Pryce at your door the next day whenever you got to campus, you said?
Yeah, Coach and I were together in 1995. And obviously the story that people have heard, Dad passed away the day we were leaving. So 6 or so days later, I arrived. But every morning, the next day, Coach would call me in the morning and would say, get up and get out of bed. And I think people probably don't understand this, but I had never met him. I signed sight unseen. I had used my visits, and back then you only got 5 visits, and I had used my visits. So I committed to Florida International sight unseen. And at the time, they had just come off the winningest season in the history of the school with 50 some wins. So they were ranked, and I wanted to go south, and I formed a relationship with Coach Casanova on the phone. And I committed. I wanted to do it. So he called me every morning, and I had made a commitment to him and Florida International, and the community was like, you got to go. So I arrived there on a Sunday evening, and the door knocked about an hour later. And he told me to call me when I got there. And I called him and come over, and it wasn't what I was expecting. And there he sat, and we talked for about an hour. And the next day, I was a player of his. There was no special, probably behind the scenes. Now that I'm a coach, that I'm sure I was in his brain a little bit, but there was no special treatment. It was time to go to work.
Now, before I get into asking Coach Pryce some things, I wanted to ask you, obviously, as a player, seeing a head coach show up to your door the first day after you did that, how much did that kind of like make you feel like you made the right decision whenever you got to campus the first day?
Well, I was a dumb 21-year-old kid that was going through a ton of emotion. So at the time, I was just, I didn't know. I didn't know what to expect. You got to remember, I came from a small town, didn't have anything like that. I just seen palm tree for the first time in my life. And it was just, going through a million things. I knew my roommate from Cape Cod, so that helped a little bit. But it was a whirlwind. But as a value, it's one of those things now that what he did that day taught me something as a coach years later that I still embrace, that first you got to be a human to the kid and to the player to even start a relationship. And he gave up his hour that evening from his family, which I know now is very important on a Sunday evening for me. And just one of those things that, he did it. I still do it. I hope the kids I've coached on it. And, I learned it right there that day.
Yeah, no, I'm going to ask you a question here coming up, Coach Pryce, but I wanted to ask you if you're offended that he didn't use one of his visits at FIU. What the hell's up with that?
You got to know Kaz. Kaz was on the phone. So Kaz painted a good picture, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen from about him coming to FIU. That was, and just going back over those times seem like yesterday that you get a call that one of your incoming players loses his dad. And, it just, if you're human, that really hits you hard. It hits you right in the heart that, wow. And my first phone call was to Mark was to say, hey, listen, you got a sister You got a mother. I think you should stay home. I personally was telling him to stay home and take care of his mother and sister, and I would take care of getting him a school and everything. So I told him that, and he said, "Nope." He said, "I already talked it over with mom. Mom says you're going to FIU," and that was it. I mean, every day, yes, I did check with him, and maybe once, maybe twice, because I could not imagine putting. I lost my dad when I was going into my junior year of college. Also, he had a stroke on Father's Day, but it just brings back so many memories. But I think I think you gotta you don't think about relationships. You just build who you are. And the moment a coach has to think about, how he wants to handle things, then he's in the wrong profession. I think it comes very natural for coaches that we are caretakers. We got to take care of our players. And because what happened to Mark and the tragedy that happened was just amazing, and it brought us close. And at the same time, us talking to the players and players knowing, and players being there a week before Mark, it became around that, everybody was on the same page that they were going to embrace this young man. They were going to embrace him. And I really believe with all my heart that Mark was embraced by every player on that team. And they took him in. You're talking about a team that has a walk of every life in the world, but they embraced him. And there's so many, I could go on and on and on, but he was embraced, and we just got closer and closer and closer.
Yeah, and obviously I'm about to go into exactly you saying you got closer. But before I get into that, as a manager or a head coach, technically in college, a lot of people think, hey, it's just about the X's and O's in baseball. But whenever you get presented something like the real life events, like Mark's father passing or someone's sibling passing or like that, how do you go ahead and separate yourself from being a head coach to being a real human at the end of the day?
I don't think I had to separate myself. I think you're so involved with your players that when something goes wrong, if it's bad enough, it's going to get back to you. If it's not bad enough, you won't never hear about it. And the truth of the matter is, you got to take care of your players, and you got to build these relationships, and you got to build them with the team, but the team's got to build them with you. Good teams have great leadership, and I think I did the normal thing. I don't see anything that I did that was abnormal. I thought it was very normal to what I was doing. I knew that he needed everybody, and I think everybody on that team was there for him. It was just it's incredible. It was a bonding time, like wow. So it's
Yeah.
just it's just something we grew. It made us grow closer as a group.
Yeah, and I was going to go ahead and get into, obviously you were saying you guys obviously very close, and Mark, you went ahead and put Cannon's middle name as Pryce, which was named after Coach Pryce. But the first time I ever met you, Coach Pryce, I don't think you remember meeting me. Remember whenever you surprised Mark at the high school field? You were in Washington, D.C., I believe, and you stopped by the high school field for a practice. It was at the end, and we were taking BP.
I I I was in DC at some event on my wife's side, and Mark asked me to come up to practice. I had no idea it was an hour and a half through. I thought Miami had traffic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has traffic too. But long story short, I do remember coming to the field, and what I remember the most about this is some blonde-headed kid with a big old grin on his face. I never forget as long as I live. And me watching, but I was just hanging around and cutting up with him. That's what I remember. And he, not that he said anything. I don't know if he said anything, but he had just this grin bigger than life. And I remember that. And then when we finished up, Ken, I wish I could remember you, and I would lie a little bit if I could think about it, but I can't. The truth of the matter is, I don't. I just remember Cannon, and I think, and I'm trying to remember which time I was there, and but I just remember Cannon, and then I was asked to speak. Mark asked me to speak afterwards, and I asked him later. I said, "What was the privilege? Why did you want me to speak tonight?" He said, "I wanted my son to hear you." And Mark, you may not remember that.
I remember it. I remember it very well.
Yeah.
I wanted him to hear you speak, and
Well, that was one of the things I think that, if when I was raising Cannon, anytime that I could just allow him around people that I knew were good in my life,
right.
Even if he grabbed it for 30 seconds or heard it and understood it later, I know how I appreciated it. And and it also allowed him to connect to a part of my life that I couldn't explain to him, so you had to see it and you had to understand it. And I remember I got emotional that day, but I remember sitting back and I looked at the kids and I caught myself thinking to myself, that's the same look I had. Cannon was sitting there with his mouth half open and he was locked in. And I'm a big look at who's talking to you. And and it hit me right there. And like we're talking full circle. That was a full circle moment for me.
Right.
I'm on my field. I'm the head coach. I'm trying to give these kids something that I looked at as endearing to me, to let them hear you, even if it's for 20 minutes, because it was life-changing for me. I'm sure some of those kids got something. But then I looked to the corner and saw Cannon, and I had a moment there where I was appreciative of you. I was appreciative of what Cannon was getting. The kids saw it as, I'm a hard ass and holy shit, Coach Shies is upset. But I never told that story till just now. But that was a moment for me of, this guy drove an hour and a half to give me 20 minutes and my kid. And it was just a little bit of a moment there that I was just like, shit. And the next thing you know, I was upset. And they saw something different. And my appreciation to you and what I saw at a Cannon in that moment was, it was full circle, just like we started this conversation about.
Well, I want you to understand and listen. I didn't see myself as given to you. I saw you guys give it to me. I thought it was just a dang honor to be up there, to one of my former players asked me to come up and speak to his team. And then I meet this blonde-headed kid that's got a crap-eating grin on his face. And the whole time, if I looked at him, he smiled. And, even if I gave him a tough eye, he smiled. It's just, and it's just things like that you remember, and it's things like that you treasure. I will always treasure those times. I've talked about these times so many times when I go out and speak. I share things with people. I want to share things with people, because anything can happen to anybody. Nobody is exempt to things happening in our lives.
One thing you don't know about that day, the day before, I guess there was a parent or a grandparent that was like watching the practice, but like Mark's big thing obviously is close practice and whatever. So me and my buddy Jesse Hart, who's in the Army right now, we're in center field, and then you come onto the field and we see Mark hugging you, and we didn't know who you were or what you look. Well, we knew who you were. We didn't know what you looked like. And he was just telling us nobody could be on the field. So we're out there and we're like, who the hell's the old man he's bringing to the field and hugging now? I thought we just set new guidelines. And then we go in and realize it's you. But the day before, he was telling us absolutely nobody there. Nobody there. And then we saw you coming on and we were like, he bring his grandfather here or what? But that was a little insight with that. But we're going to go ahead and move on to segment number 2. Obviously, Mark's from Clear Spring. You've now been to Clear Spring, seen it. It's a small town America, as a lot of people call it, but FIU is not small town America at all. You're bringing a South Beach, everything like that. Was that ever a concern to you, or was that through a recruiting process with a small town kid, how he'd be able to adapt and adjust to living in the South Beach area and the FIU life?
The only thing I was concerned about, would he adapt to our locker room? Would he adapt to our team? I don't think you think too much about, is South Florida different from Clear Springs? Absolutely. But at the same time, I grew up in small town America, and right. I've been there since 1972, and I miss small town America. I see how much leadership comes out of small town America. I am someone that would live in small town America if I had a chance. And, traffic in a small town that lasts a minute and a half, people go crazy. They really do. They really do. But in Miami, you just you're used to it. It's part of the culture. It's part of what we do, So, but yeah, I love, and the reason when I was captain of the baseball team, I was captain of the football team on some weekends, and some weekends I wasn't. But on Sunday night, they always took 3 or 4 of the best players on the team into the small hometown there, and they had dinner at the center table of a restaurant, and all the townsfolk would come in when they would eat dinner on Sunday night and say hello because you were Knights of the Week. We were the Northern Nash Knights. So it was really good. It made you feel proud, if you know what I mean. You can get lost in a big city. You're not going to get lost. If you're an athlete and you do some things pretty good, you're not going to get lost. I mean, people are more apt to take care of each other. Like the cul-de-sac I live on, we all know each other. We take care of each other, but I don't know who lives on the next street. I don't know who lives at the intersections. I don't know those things. But in small town America, I knew everybody and everybody knew me, same thing. It was just, I am it's amazing how many small town America people go to West Point Naval Academy, Air Force Academy. You would think it come from some big school, but a big percentage of those kids come from small town America. It's just amazing because they've been in leadership abilities. First job I had, Central High School, we had between 5,000 and 6,000 students. We had a morning shift 7 to 12 and an afternoon shift 12:10 to 5:10 or something. But if you go out for football or baseball there, you could get lost. You could just get lost. And that doesn't happen in small town America. It's hard to get lost.
Coach, remember when I was only there for 2 days, and I was there for 3 days, and then I got in a fight. Do you remember this?
I remember something about it.
I come in, they send me up to you, and I have a black eye and a couple other things. And you said, what were you doing? I said, well, one of the guys got a guy hitting. And you said, did you know him? And I said, I just met him at the bar. And you said, you ain't in Clear Spring no more. I thought for sure you were going to throw me off the team. Coley, remember Dave? He was involved, but yeah, I'll never forget that. You looked at us and you go, you guys ain't where you used to be. This ain't Clear Spring no more, son.
No, I know. It's crazy, but
well, you're dug out. When we were in South Beach, but 90% of your time is on the field with the guys in the dorm. You make your own little small town, and you make what it is. And yes, it's South Beach and stuff, but I think the one good thing of small town America is you have morals and you learn some things, and it's handed down from generation to generation, and you get to watch it as a youth, and then you carry it out as an adult. And if you really cherish it, you make sure it's handed to the next. And I think sometimes that's lost in the big picture. And I think that's where the leadership sometimes you see at a small town. You're the captain of the basketball team. You're the captain of the soccer and football team. You know how to lead. The community rallies around you. Sometimes big cities don't offer that, and you get that here. And then you know how to walk into a locker room, and you know how to carry yourself. And then when we had the tragedy with Cannon, I had to make a decision of, am I a leader of the town, or am I at the moment a sorrowed dad? And and you guys were there for that, and you see that, and those are moments that come from small town, and I'm thankful for that. Even though we make fun of small towns at times, and that I'm proud of where I came from, and I'm proud of where I got to go, and here I'm back to where I'm at, and I'm damn proud of this little town and the people in the town and towns around it.
Yeah, I'm proud of Clear Springs too, the way that they came together when they needed to come together. And I think one thing about coaching is you got to always respect yourself. If you're a small town America, that's what you know. So we're going to take this locker room. We're going to come small town America. So everybody kind of knows a little bit about everybody. You know what I mean?
Well, when I spoke at Cannon's, the thing they had for the 3 boys, I've received calls from California I guess it's on YouTube, or Cam, you would probably help us out a little bit better now. But people, I guess, just clicked on it, and I have received phone call, text messages, and things, and emails about that moment of tragedy into a moment of what we're going to do and how we're going to get through this. And I think that comes from that day and what we saw with the people and how this area reacted and the blessings they did. If people could just have seen that, that's as damn good as the United States gets in small town America.
Well, the first thing we did was on the football field.
That was where people, and I went there that day and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go as Coach Shies. And I'm not a guy who talks in third person, but I was like, they were my players. That was my son. They were my kids. I want the community to know that we're doing this together. There's no animosity here. We're three families that just became one family, and we're going to make sure the town is with our families. And I thought that was a good thing. And I thought it, and I'm sure there was a lot of young kids that were there that day that realized that this is just what we do. We stay our course and we hold true to who we are.
Well, I remember being told to sit here. And when I sat down, this little girl sat down beside me. And it was Kelly and her family. You know what I'm talking about? And
for the people listening, Kelly Weaver. Her son was one of the three in the car accident that day, Clayton.
And the little girl sat down beside me, and she was very tense. I'll never forget. And I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yes, I'm going to speak." And I just went and talked to her, and probably the best seat I could have gotten in the house was for me to sit beside that little girl. Not for her to sit beside me, for me to sit beside that young lady.
And she was amazing, and she still is today. And you can see her slowly becoming a fixture around here. And yeah, she was wonderful that day. Powerful kid.
How old was she? 8, 9, maybe?
I think she's 7th or 8th grade now. So she would be a little older than that. She'd be 12, 13.
Yeah, that's not right. But
yeah, she would have probably been 10 or 11 then. Yeah, you're right.
I listened to her, and I guess she listened to me. But I told her, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine." And she wasn't just fine. She was great. And sometimes I think, when I look at this 11-3-2, when I look at you got a moment, this is bigger than anything in life I've ever witnessed in my life. And so just a few weeks ago, I don't mean to get off script, but I spoke at a high school thing. And I said, I'm thinking about talking of it. And you said, "Well, you better be strong." I remember you telling me I better be strong. I said, "Man, I'm strong. I can do this." Well, and I did do it. And the reason I've done it is I've done it so many times in my mind. You know what I mean? I got it down. But when you have a high school team, maybe 50, 60 people there, and after I got into it, and you don't hear a whisper. You don't hear a whisper. And so many people come up to me and says, "Coach, I can't wait for the movie to come out. I want to see the movie." I said, "It's going to come out. You got my word on it. And it's going to come out. I mean, it's too big, and it's in God's hands for it not to come out. This is about God presenting things the way God wants to present them. And we can't question our faith about things, but I always got a starting point, and I can go back to 11-3-2 and everything that happened with even Hannah's mother stopping to get breakfast that morning. It's $11.32. This is stuff we can't make up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah. All right, now getting into segment 3, as we just got done talking about that, I wanted to go ahead and ask Mark, from your perspective. Obviously, you say don't overlook the things that are right in front of you at the time. Now seeing that, as you kind of you've told us in the barn that don't overlook the things you're going through, don't overlook the process, whatever. What do you truly mean by that, especially with Coach Pryce? You kind of mentioned that and wanted to get into that this week.
Oh, I'm at the point in my age of my coaching career and playing that you rewind things. And sometimes I think when we're kids or players, I catch myself now telling you guys, turn the damn lights off if you're not going to use them. That used to drive me nuts when my mom would say that. And coach had a saying, early bird gets the worm. And one time I was coaching with him and he asked me, he said, how many ground balls is enough? How many fly balls is enough? And he was like, there is no answer to that. There's not enough. And my philosophy now, as I'm older, is, I'm a big believer in repetitive. If a kid constantly understands and is given the right things and repetitive motions and things like that, you're going to grasp it. But if I had to say, with coach and all those things, it was details and things I overlooked. Rolando Casanova was a coach, and Kaz and I were like oil and water in the locker room. And I miss his ass more and more each day now. And I catch myself saying things that he did. He was on me when I was a player, a first-year coach, as my shoes. Shine your shoes. And I said, Kaz, why are you always shining them damn shoes? And I shine my shoes, to this day as a coach. I wanted my shoes clean. I was always wiping them with Clorox, make sure they were clean. Little things like that. I like I said, I look at them now. I appreciate them. I never got a chance to tell Kaz that story, but and the same thing with Coach. Coach was a guy that I didn't appreciate some of the things till I got older, and Coach was genuine. I never saw him not take a moment for somebody that needed it, whether it was somebody. I caught myself this week, Coach, you'll appreciate this story. I'm leaving a job and starting another one. And you find out in your building at times who you're close to. And I'm tight with the maintenance guy, and a lot of people look at maintenance, and I guess if you're looking at the chart from who's the highest to who's the lowest, sometimes we don't really, I never looked at anybody like that. And, Coach didn't either. I can remember we go to that field, from the person that poured him a Coke to the guy that did the grounds, we were all on the same playing surface. If the maintenance guy was there and the dean of students was there, I can promise you that, Danny was going to make sure who was in first in line was who had the most need. And I hope that I've learned in my lifetime, in my trip, that I've carried out some of those traits that he handed on, and that I realize now that I took in. And those are things now as you get older, I kind of, I preach to you, Cam, about small details and little things. And, and now that I'm older, I'm thankful for those lessons, even though if I had to hear him say one more time when I was trying to get my meal money or hand out the meal money that the early bird gets the worm, I probably wish I could have strangled his ass back in the day. But now it's one of those things where all of us players probably right now, if they were watching, would be making his high-pitched voice saying the early bird gets the worm, the early bird gets the worm. And we all lost our damn minds, but we probably all use some type of cliche now, just from something that he repetitively beat in our heads.
Yeah, and Coach Pryce, we're going to get into now, this is our sports segment of stuff, but the Orioles manager, Brandon Hyde, was fired. And personally, I don't think he should have been fired. I think Mike Elias, the GM, should have been fired, but that's for another day as he constructed the roster. But Mark always says, and I've heard him in the barn say, like, a coach is only as good as the players that are with him. And so that's going to be true. Looking at Brandon Hyde, obviously they had the worst ERA in baseball, and they didn't end up hitting, but it didn't matter if they would end up hitting. But I wanted to go ahead and ask Mark, then I'm going to go ahead and ask you, Mark, whenever you say the coach is only as good as the players around him are, what do you mean by that?
Well, look at today with the NIL. You got a coach that used to be, if we all were, a coach can be better. If I gave Coach Pryce 20 guys and I gave another guy 20 guys and they were all on the equal playing field, Coach's going to outcoach those guys. I've watched him do it. But if Coach has 20 guys as freshmen and then he coaches them up and 10 of them become really good, and then your higher power team comes in and buys somebody and buys your 3 best players, well, how the hell are you going to compete when you don't have the money and you're in tears? That's why when we recruit, we try to go get whatever. But, there you got the Orioles, and Gunnar Henderson last year's batting 3-something and in the 20 home run category. And then this year he's not. Well, that's Brandon Hyde's fault. At times, if, I said one time in high school, the year I won the state title. Well, I don't think I said a word the last 8 games. You throw out a product. My product was better because I had talented kids. I had 3 or 4 D1 guys on that team. You get D1 guys around these small towns, and you should win. And if we don't win and they're producing and I make a mistake, okay, that's different. But if I throw out 9, did you watch the Preakness this week?
I didn't. No.
Okay, there's 8 thoroughbreds racing. You take a horse from down here at Charlestown and throw him in with 8 thoroughbreds, and his ass might not even be in the camera screen when they finish. There's a complete different layer of talent. Whether we want to admit that or not, it's the truth. But at the end of the day, you got to be on a level playing field.
And I'm pretty sure Zach Eflin, the pitcher for the Orioles, he ended up, if Zach Eflin sees this and he did it, don't come at me. I saw it, but he came out and said, like, I guess that he said, hey, how do you feel about your manager being fired? And he straight up said, he said, we sucked. We didn't play up to what it is. We got him fired. So hearing that is the players understand they got him fired, which has to be hard, especially in the major leagues, because you didn't live up to the expectations of whatever.
And so, Cam, like you said once before, a college guy can lose at a clubhouse. You can lose a locker room, but a MLB player is a professional. If he needs somebody every day to light his ass up, that's his job and his responsibility. I'm a school teacher. I walk in there. It's my responsibility to educate. I don't get to take a morning or a day off and not, then you're not a professional. That's very simple.
Well, I wanted to go ahead and bounce this off to Coach Pryce. Obviously, coaching at FIU, not being the professional level, but you still got to keep afloat. Some years you're not as good, and you got to keep your job. As you see, even in college, people are getting fired like crazy. If you don't produce, you're not going to stay, especially whenever FIU is a highly thought after program, as whenever you were there. So as a head coach in college, with that, you're only as good as the players around you. How did you kind of balance out those years where you knew you weren't going to be as good talent-wise, but you just wanted to stay afloat and still put a good product out on the field?
Well, I honestly, I never went through those things in my mind.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to be good.
Right.
And I think the hardest thing to do is to have that locker room. And even if it's not you that has the locker room, if you got a player that has the locker room, you can teach him of the things that you need. I mean, I can look back in 2001. Mark knows more about this as much as I do. We had practice at 2:00, and they would have a meeting every so often, and it was their team meeting day. And the captain opened the door and he says, "Coach, I know it's 10 minutes to 2 because I noticed somebody was doing early work. Nothing was going on. I was sitting in the dugout, seeing what was going on. And the captain opened the door and he says, "Coach, we might need some extra minutes today." I said, "Take all the time you need," because everything was running like clockwork. We were not only showing up, we were winning, and guys were on the same page. And when you worked, they got the things done. That happens to be the year that we went to the Super Regions. There's so much stuff wrapped up in that thing. It's some way. Sometimes you got different ways of having the locker room. Maybe you got your players are just centerpieces, and you got to have communication with them, and they got to have communication with you. But I learned so much from my players. I love being around winners. I love being around guys that were ahead of themselves, doing things, getting better. Instead of complaining, they were down there getting extra BP. They were getting out early. They were doing the things. They were not complainers. They were guys that were mixing in, making things happen. And being away on trips, I mean, you go win a series. It don't matter if you win the first 2 games. If you lose Sunday, your weekend's ruined. If you lose Friday and you win Saturday, Sunday, hey, the flight or the bus ride was going to be hilarious. And, I was able, one of the things that I could always do, I laughed at myself. I was able to laugh at myself. And I would catch myself having a hell of a conversation sometimes with myself, talking to myself. And I think because of those things, um, I didn't mind those things. And, I laughed along with the players, and having a good locker room is just like having a great family, man.
Right.
That's just an extension of your family. That's all it is. If you got pretty good talent and you got a great locker room, I'll take that greater talent with less, with a greater locker room. Give me that great locker room with a little talent. We could go some places. And
Right.
2001, we were good. We had 3 big leaguers on that team.
Damn right we were.
We were good, but they were easy to coach. They were easy because sometimes instead of them hanging, you were hanging. I mean, it was just such a
Right.
good mixture. I mean, Mark,
So yeah.
the day we needed to win, Mark got on the bus. I said, "Where is everybody at?" He says, "Coach, just relax, hold on, everything's done." Well, about 10 minutes later, the door opened from the hotel and they walked out. They got on the bus. There wasn't a word said. Nobody said anything. They were on the same page. We were going against first team All American. We chased them between the 4th and 5th inning. They were locked in. I didn't lock them in. They were on this page of getting locked in. They wanted to be there, and they wanted to prove that they were there. Maybe in the early part of the year when we won some games and enough smoke was blown that, hey, we can be pretty good. And guys by guys kept buying in. Hey, when we got there, these guys had bought in, and the captain was Gus Alfonso. Hey, a smart kid, a really smart kid, but a great teammate. And I can always, when I see players, something always comes back to me. And he drew a picture of me one time with the finger out, meaning take sign, because they hated to take. It didn't matter. The 3-0 count, the bases loaded. They think you're supposed to be able to swing. We're not swinging in this count. Or the bunt. Guys got to the big leagues hitting third, and yet they bunted in the first inning. And one of those teams we won 51 games with. But they bunted in the first game. You get 1 and 2 on. Hey, man, let's strike early. Strike early. Let's get on top. Everybody loves playing with a lead. I don't care who you are. And then from there, you add hit and run. When it comes to bunting, you're hitting and running. I kind of play the game backwards sometimes. I know that, but it was kind of the way I like to get the kids on top.
Yeah. So basically, culture's bigger is what you're trying to say, and the kids are making that. Obviously, the coach, as I've been with Mark, he kind of sets the culture and the standards, and then the players around, if you really have a good group, creates the locker room and the culture all around.
Amazing. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to go ahead. Mark, do you have anything for Mark's Minute today?
Sure. This week I had like a little moment with a military guy, and it kind of hit me. Clayton Canode would come in this house, and no matter where you were, he would come in, shake your hand, and I'd be sitting on the couch. He'd ask me. His big thing was, "How was your day?" And whenever I spoke about that 3 years ago, it hit me that it was something that I have embraced over the last couple of years. I think in today's world, we have forgot. We're too damn worried about looking at our phone or doing something when we're out in public. And I try to say good morning. I make sure I say hello. If I see somebody, a lot of times at church, I'll nod my head. I think we've lost that. In my building at work, people walk by you that, we're a team, and they'll walk right by you, and no good morning, no hello. And the same way out in society. I don't think you got to sit and shake hands. But if you see somebody by yourself and you're walking and you can't nod your head, you can't say good morning. So this gentleman was sitting there, he had a military hat on, and he kind of turned around and looked, and I said, good morning. And he kind of spun around. He said, well, they're forgotten words. And I kind of looked at him and I said, yeah, I agree, sir. And he said, well, there's a forgotten word too. And, with thoughts of Clayton, and this is a month that everybody likes. His birthday's coming around. We're not too good to say hello to each other. The world's torn enough. Society is at its own cutthroat part. Good morning, hello, nod your head. I think right there just starts a little bit of understanding that we're all in the same shit. We're all doing the same thing, but politeness and just a little bit of reserve to mankind. That what I learned at 47 years old from a little blonde-haired kid like Clayton, a valuable lesson that I think we can all pass on, and I think it's a lesson that we can all benefit from. And I thought I would share that today with everybody watching.
It's very,
Coach.
very true. Very, very
Coach,
true.
you want to go ahead and have a minute? If you want, you're the first ever guest, so you can go ahead and give your words of wisdom here. I don't have a fancy name like Mark's Minute, but you can go ahead.
You got a minute, big man.
Here you go.
I've had a pretty good journey. I don't think I'm through. I think there's so much I got to learn to do. And I think communication is so key. Just coming up here today and going up and talking to the girls at the front desk, they're the nicest people in the world. But you know what? Communication's everything. I think Mark's exactly right. To say hello and just give somebody a smile and just, keep going, or, hold a door open for somebody, and just we sometimes we've got away from that. But you know what? Sometimes growing up in small town America, it was awesome. And you learn to say thank you, because sometimes you couldn't leave when somebody spoke to you if you didn't use the word thank you, good morning, good evening, what's going on. And we just got to get back to our roots. And sometimes we worry so much about what others think. If you go through enough and you get enough calluses on your hand, you don't really care about what other people think. Just treat people the way that you would really want to be treated yourself. I mean, that rule's been around forever.
It's the golden rule.
Just be kind to one another. And we can, I can't, I'm a small part of the difference, but when I get the chance to talk to groups and stuff like that, I talk about these things, because I think, you can come in and you can make a change. My son-in-law, God bless his soul, he's going through cancer, and he had surgery today, came out beautiful. He's going to be okay. And I asked him last week, why did you finally do this? He says, because I got tired of you telling me I had to do it. And I told him so many times, and when are you going to get this done? He finally did it, and they found it in the early stages. Well, you know what? I saved his life. Not only did I do that, but he told every friend he had, and all the guys his age have gone and have this test. And if you just got to treat people the way you want to be treated. If you can make a difference in this world, I'm just thankful for the players I had. I'm thankful for the times that they come up and they talk to me. I'm thankful for the phone calls I get right now. I was talking to an alumni Friday on the on trip coming up, and another one called me. And this one that called me is a writer. And so this is where that went there, that his agent is signed a contract with Warner Brothers. So it's just everything the way it goes together. I got a pastor that I've been friends with for 45, 50 years, I guess. And he always told me when things was going bad, I would call him. And he said, Coach, you were born to be a coach. And I remember him telling me that so many times. And maybe I fell in love with that, but I fell in love with my players. I tell you what, Mark's not the only player that I love. And I say it often to the guys when I hear from them that, that's one good thing about Mark. I think you can agree. Being in South Florida, being in the heavily Latin culture, the way that the Latins show that they care about you, the hugs, the embraces, love you, coach type stuff. I gained a lot because I didn't grow up with that. I did not grow up with that. I grew up in small town America, but you were too macho if you did that in those back in the days. I'm 73 years old. So 50 years ago, coming back to North Carolina and seeing relatives and giving them a hug was kind of unusual, 20, 30 years ago. So that's what I've seen. So I think I've been where I was supposed to have been. I hope I get more chances to share the message, share 1132, because we just can't let it go. It happened, and it's our thing to build this legacy and to keep this thing going. It's the thing that's put on our plate. We got to do this, and I feel such a need for it. And I don't know how many days I was up there, but Mark, I want you to remember this. I was the butt of a lot of jokes up there, but I laughed at myself because it was kind of funny, and you were pretty good, Mark. You could tell the story. But after about the second, third day, I said, Mark, I'm your water boy. Whatever you need, I'm your water boy. Just let me know what you did. I couldn't do anything for you, but at the same time, I needed to be around you as much as you needed to be around people. And I love your family. I really do. And I feel grace of God that you've been in my life. All you guys have been in my life.
Appreciate that. Cam, as you can see, he can take a minute and make it 5 real quick.
For practices.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, but it's funny because as we sit here and you guys say that, never in my did I think whenever I met Mark that I'd be doing a podcast with him like this, and let alone doing a podcast right now. And Coach Pryce, you're on here, so you never know where life's going to kind of take you, but you always just trust it.
We don't, but I tell you something. Mark talked about the what's going on with the money and all that stuff today. We got some of the best coaches in America didn't even make the conference tournaments. And they're some of the best coaches in the country. They just didn't have some of the best money. I could sit here and drop name after name after name after name after name. Give me a good team and give me the money to play. Players want money. And the guys that don't have it, they're not in conference tournament unless they just happen to pick some guys that weren't very good and blossom. I mean,
yeah. And you're starting to see. You're starting to see with everything that.
Yeah, it's got to change. I mean, I don't want to bring up names, but I get disappointed for people because I know how hard they work. I know how much they put into it, and I know how much I believe in them, and I know how much I love them, and I know what kind of people they are. If you work with a soul for a year, you're with that person more than you are with your family, and you talk to that people about everything. I mean, it's just hard. It's just hard for me to look at these things there. So a lot of good coaches that are not in the playoffs.
Yeah. And so we're going to get into our closing remarks now. Obviously, I just wanted to thank Coach again for joining us. But my final question for you, Coach, to kind of send things off, I wanted to go ahead and ask you, obviously, you've seen Mark grow from a player into a coach and into a dad and into a man. What has really impressed him or impressed you over the years of seeing Mark grow?
Just the process of stuff, handling things. And yet I was on campus one night on a regular practice that probably ended at 5 or 6, I don't know. And driving out of the parking lot, I see Mark, and Mark says, "What are you still doing here?" I said, "Well, I was just handling some stuff." And it was about 9 o'clock at night. I mean, and I don't know if Mark remembers that. And I kind of steered Mark away from coaching because I knew I had missed a lot of times and things and family and stuff. I would say things to him that I would steer him away from. I would steer him away from coaching. He went into coaching because he they say don't go into coaching if you can live without it. Obviously, he couldn't live without it. I couldn't live without it. I wouldn't change my route. I would have probably, the only thing I would do different is players caught on the accountability and the credibility is sometimes. An athletic director told me one time when I was in talking about I needed this for this player. He told me, he says, Coach, he says, you didn't bring him in a raise. You got him for 2 to 4 years. Well, I did bring him that raise. I wanted kids to leave better as a person than they did when they got there. I really got into the soul of the players, and I know I did. Some I was more successful than others. Some I wasn't. But the good thing about it is I got so much out of these players. These players, I mean, when I say that, they gave me so much. The respect, the appreciation that they had just after a game, a big win or a big loss, just coming by you and patting you on the back. You know what I mean? You know what that says? You know what that says without saying anything? I got your back. And that's, as a coach, you got to have their back, but they got to have your back. And, I had a lot of great relationships, and I appreciate them to this day so much.
Yeah, and obviously I want to go ahead and pass it to Mark, then I'll go ahead and close it out. But Mark, obviously naming Cannon's middle name and Cannon after Coach Pryce, obviously a huge figure in your life. How did he kind of help you structure who you are now as a man and a coach and all of that?
He was a role model, and I think I call him coach, but and to me, coach is one of the most endearing things a kid can call you, especially as you get older. To call him coach to me is the most up respect I can give him. But he finished what my parents couldn't, and then we turned into he was a coach and I was his employee, and then I think what we really found in that was we were meant to be together. And you announced him today and you said he has over 1,000 wins. What he has put into society by installing his interactions to us, and how I have been able to spread it here. And I know I got other guys that are coaching all over the place. We're under his tree, and it's a damn good limb to be to been grown out on. And I'm thankful for him. I'm thankful for him in my life. I'm thankful for what he has done for my family and my kids. And I know the day Cannon passed, the next day I knew he was going to be there. And if something happened to him, I know I'll be there. But, you made a comment. You said that you don't know what's in your tank. You got a lot in your tank. You're a national treasure. And I'm thankful for you. And I love you. And you know that. And I appreciate everything. And we got a lot more to do. Send it out, Cam, because if he gets another word, we're going to have an hour and a half podcast.
All right. But Coach Pryce, thank you very much. The first ever guest on Lions Life for episode 4. Look to have you possibly again on. We're going to have a lot more guests, but this is the first one with guests. So, we're still figuring everything out with the guests, the whole Zoom and everything working. So we'll get better at everything as it goes on. But Coach Pryce, thank you very much again for joining and putting your words of wisdom. But other than that, I just wanted to say, live your life like a lion and be a lion.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on. Love you guys.
Love you too.